Tawheed. So what do we mean by Tawheed, or the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala?
Well, you answered your own question. The oneness of Allah means that there's only one God. Okay? And, you know, in the history of humanity, if I can just briefly, there's been a tendency to worship the stars, the moon, statues. I've heard that in ancient Rome and in ancient Greece, they actually had statues that were flesh-colored, and some of them even moved. And with the misconcepts that people had about these things, they thought that not so much that the statues were God, but that they were representations of God. And they would have a tendency to worship them, to turn to them. And they would make sacrifices. They got into human sacrifices and all these other things. Within the framework of what we've been given in Quran from Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we understand that there's only one God. He's above his creation, and he's in control of everything. We also understand that the creation that Allah has established, and as far as the beings, the human, the living entities that he has that interact with his creation, would be the angels, which were made from light, the jinn, which were made from fire, and us human beings, who are made from earth, clay, soil. And the oneness of God, what it does is it causes you to focus, it causes you to understand. When you understand that concept, and not concept, astaghfirullah al-azim, when you understand what we are told to do as far as the Quran is concerned, and you use it in conjunction with Quran, and you use that in conjunction with the Sunnah of our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as he's taught us to use it, and you start to see things come out as you've seen in so many times. For instance, Islam is 1,439 years. It's been here. And when Prophet Muhammad brought Islam, when he brought the concept of Tawheed to the Arabian Peninsula, to Mecca, the people in Mecca, and the people in that area, they were involved in worshipping statues. They were involved in worshipping the creation, the stars, and so forth and so on. And there was so much injustice at that particular point in time. And when he brought that concept within the framework of time that it was finalized, the changes in the peninsula, the changes towards the people had towards one another, and the developments that were brought about by the people who came from that area as they spread Islam around the world, you saw changes for the better, as long as people adhered to that concept. La ilaha illallah, there's only one God. I don't want to talk too long, but basically we mean there's only one God.
Jazakallah. Sheikh Jamal, something else to add?
Bismillah, I think he covered a lot of things in Tawheed.
Because it's a very important issue to talk about, to clarify it. So we want people to understand, what do we mean by Tawheed, or oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala?
It's actually one of the most important issues of humanity since the very beginning. It's the one subject that if it is correct and perfect, then everything will be good in this life and in the hereafter. It's interesting because, you know, I have a lot of Christian friends, okay, because I grew up in a Christian environment. And they used to always talk about Jesus having these divine attributes, and they would attribute basically the essence of the Creator, the one who sent Jesus, to Jesus. And I used to actually talk to them about different verses about where Jesus would say, "Hear, O Israel, the most important commandment is the first commandment." And they would ask themselves, what do you mean by the first commandment? I said, you have to rewind back because it's a long chain of messengers that came along with the same message. So he's talking about that very first message of Moses, when Moses brought the 10 Commandments. And he said the very first one, "Thou shalt not take any other gods in the air, the sea, the land below. Thou shalt worship only me." Okay, this was the first one.
Which is Tawheed.
Which is Tawheed. It's saying you're going to go ahead and submit your will to the Creator who created everything around and created you. It's a pretty simple concept. And it's the one thread that you can see from the very first man, Adam, all the way through the Jewish prophets, all the way through the Christian prophet, and all the way to Islam. This one concept of Tawheed, worshiping the one true God. And it's interesting because, you You know, in Arabic we say La ilaha. Okay? So ilaha is literally means no God. Now I'll have some Christians that ask me, why don't we just call it God? Why do we call it Allah? And I have to explain to it from a linguistic aspect because this is my specialty. I deal with languages. And I say, if you look at this, look at the word God. A tree can be a God. A statue can be a God. Anything could be a God. And this term in Arabic is ilah. Okay? But Allah is just like the Hebrew word Elohim. Elohim means it was a possessive. It means it only belongs to Him, this name. It's the same. We keep the same roots into this. And so Allah literally negates anything else that we can actually possibly imagine as being God, as being Allah. And this is the amazing part about Islam, is you are actually submitting yourself to the one that can only help you. You're relying on them, and this is actually where the term Islam comes from. The brother here, he had said that Islam is only 1,400 years old, 1,400 and some change. Well, I would actually argue that Islam has been here since the very beginning. When that very first man, Adam, who was given free will, and he disobeyed God, Allah, and he ate of that fruit of that tree. And then what did he do? He felt shame, and he submitted back to God.
Allah Akbar.
And by submitting that very first one, he was the very first Muslim. One who submits to God.
So he was acting with Tawheed.
He was acting with Tawheed because he realized he made a mistake and he disobeyed Allah and he turned back to Allah. And so this is the beautiful thing about Islam. And this is the one area that we as Muslims, we spend our whole entire life trying to perfect. We spend our whole life. This is what we do. This is the one area that we spend the most time on. Because there are Muslims, they sin. They do bad deeds. They do things that you would look at and say, this is not what Muslims do. But this one area, they spend their whole entire time trying to polish it up and make sure that nothing gets in the way of worshiping the one true God. And that's Tawheed.
Allah Akbar. So to complete, He's one.
Yeah.
And we have to submit ourselves to Him.
No.
And we don't have to associate anything beside Him.
Correct.
Exactly.